Yo, welcome to Expand Understanding Podcast. We've got Frank's show finishing up. Frank Castle Fearless finishing up on the other channel. We usually follow his show on here on Saturday nights, but tonight we have a guest on with us, Adam, who has been on several times before. Let's get the screen oriented here. Pull that off. Hello. And let's see, tonight we're going to talk with Adam again about things that piqued his interest that also pique our interest and always stir a good conversation. Let me get this banner off of here. Hope everybody's doing well tonight in, I don't know, what are we in, October? Fall's kicking in. There's still remnants of the vid and how it's affecting culture and everybody's interaction, and that all affects us differently, but hope you're doing well from your home or wherever you're listening from tonight. And welcome. Zach should be on with us as well. Zach's just finishing something up, and he'll be here shortly. So, without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. Adam, how's it going, man?
Going all right. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are things in the world of Adam and Adam's life?
They're pretty good. There's, taking it kind of slow. Did some family photos today, things like that.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty nice out there.
What are family photos like nowadays? Back in the day, it was like going down to Penny's, JC Penney's, or something, doing family photos. I mean, now, cell phones or whatever. I mean, do you guys have a family friend or photographer? What'd you guys do?
Well, on this photographer, I just have a kind of, I guess, intermediate knowledge about cameras, and so I can get some decent photos. Use the right lenses, and you can get just generally good photos. And we got a bunch of really good ones actually out there today. When I set it up with the timer so that I can run out there and, take a few myself and pressing the button on me too and whatever. So it's cool. I've done it that way for kind of a long time because they tend to come out really, really well, I guess. And if you have to pay somebody to do this, it probably costs, I don't know, at least $100. So,
yeah, at least $100. I mean, it depends on the dynamic. So yeah, it's nice that we can be all techie and come in. And we got Zach.
$100. Good Lord, that's a lot of money.
Oh man, $100.
Isn't that the story of like the photographer though? You start taking pictures because like you kind of in your mind, you're like, man, there could be like these awesome pictures of me, and then you realize you're the only motherfucker that knows how to actually run the camera. So you got to set it up and run over there and all this silly shit. Like I filmed the whole climbing video of myself over the course of like 6 months, where like I ran the camera, I set up the lights, I did the climbing, I cleaned the projects, I edited the video. Like it ends up being a one-man team.
It's awesome that technology got to the point where that's possible. That we've been enabled to that degree by we're definitely standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of that. Right.
Yeah, I never would have made a computer if I was left to my own devices. I might have thought about it, but I wouldn't have made it.
Well, you heard about the guys who did a lot of this early computer work where they were taking just transistors and making, like sound cards and video cards out of it. It was just a bunch of dudes who trip a bunch, and they got together and did some really serious work. It was almost like the early hackathons, but they were actually. I wish I remembered the name of it, something more specific, but. They got documentaries on this stuff, and it's really inspiring. But they're obviously very inspired themselves.
It's funny, yeah, you say that too, because there's a dynamic with entheogens or mind-altering substances, whatever category you want to put those in. That, I mean, Lucy, for example, there's definitely spaces within Lucy where you're cognitively present, but your different perceptions are skewed in a slight way. I mean, I remember realizing, because it lasts for hours, right? And there's you're consciously aware, and so like putting etherical pins in certain places within that experience, and like this right here, this area, cognitively, physically, if there were people in the same space with the mindset to create whatever that is, you're just there together to create something. I definitely could see like tuning into that morphogenic field, if you will, or reality of like Silicon Valley people or people that get together and do these things to actually create, to actually invent and create and manifest something. It's not just have a good time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally. Yeah, largely the thing that I think is most valuable about that, they've got it down to it's called the default mode network, and that's the normal way that your brain operates. And so what psychedelics do is that they disable this default mode network so that your mind can go into more of a free association mode. That's why the brain scans show it more lighting up in unity instead of energy in disparate parts. So it's kind of the idea is that you're able to free associate. So things that you wouldn't necessarily put together, you're like, why would I put an apple together with like freaking chocolate or something? It doesn't make any sense. And then you do it and it's delicious.
Or a bicycle moving at the speed of light.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And especially things with your imagination. If it's just something in your imagination, especially if you're trying to consciously imagine something, use the imaging matrix of your mind type of thing, then it empowers that to a great degree. And I remember I'd have to see if it's uh, you know, anyway, the study is it's a study that somebody did with mushrooms, I believe. And what they did was they got a bunch of experts in their own different fields, some different types of professionals who were each of them had some kind of problem that they weren't able to fix. And so they came and they did a mushroom trip, and they were able to, all of them down to one, were able to get past that obstacle that they were facing professionally. And I think the general idea that is that they're able to step out of their normal mode of thinking, go to free association mode, and see patterns that exist that you don't normally think when you're like locked in your normal box. You're like your official solid ego. If you can loosen that up, then a lot more possibilities exist to you that exist anyway, but to your very localized specific, like laser pointed focus, you don't quite see in the same type of way. So uh, it's funny because if we could be in that mode all the time, there's a bit of sacrifice in that as well. There's a bit of benefit to being, brought back into your normal conscious ego, frame of mind. But um, of course, there's limitations to that too. That's why we go
I
there.
think it's interesting to note that this like applies way outside of like the profession, or maybe like something that seems like in like a just a difficult problem no one's solved. And it really happens anytime that we're asking like, what should I do? Because our realm of possibilities inside of that is limited by where we think that we are able to get, not where a person would be able to get. And so like the difference between like this person and a person is actually a huge difference, but oftentimes they're used in like the same place when we're trying to answer like, what could I do in this situation, even when it's as simple as like, what could I do for fun tonight? It's like, you don't think of the idea of throwing an amazing party at your house with all of your friends if you don't have a house, you know? So like
Mhm.
if you can open up your mind to this free association, and then you start to see more possibility because you're not limited basically by your normalization of reality. And that happens everywhere.
Yeah, it is like, this ancient shaman tradition is to use substances that exist all around every human all over the world. For some reason, nature definitely wants you to trip because it puts the same substances all over the place. Do they use that to, do the sort of Prometheus thing, and you sort of go out and you go into your vision space and have a mystical experience, and you learn some kind of information that is useful for your people, and you bring that information back, and you're making some kind of like sacrifice. It's not really, it doesn't seem like sacrifice to us when we're using good stuff, but especially if people were using stuff that might make them sick, might poison them, then they would definitely be making a sacrifice to sort of step minds so that they could go and get whatever information. And it's, you're right, it is more than just like a professional thing. Like they could be getting some, maybe it's something like, oh, the volcano is going to explode or something, and they come back and like, oh shit, we gotta, like, everybody gotta leave. And people are like, why? You just had a dumb vision about it, and the volcano explodes anyway. Who knows? The birds are leaving, but the shaman has a vision about it, and some people are going to believe, some people aren't, kind of thing. I'm just telling stories.
No, that's good. Actually, on that note, it makes me think of something. So using this as a reference, let me see if this will come through on this application decently well. Yeah, it looks okay. So I think we've shown this before on the show or talked about this. So here's your brain. Here's your brain, and here's your brain on drugs. This is a placebo of a normal default network, just our normal state. So the more ingrained lines, the darker lines in here are just more thought processes, work, family, things that are normal day interactions. I think that's probably permeated your subconscious and their normal routes your mind travels every day. And then over here is on psilocybin, which Adam was talking about. And so this is a way more interconnectivity, INNER, and interconnectivity within yourself, your own nervous system, your sensory perception of awareness. And so that being said, even with the volcano example that you were talking about, it seems like either two things, right? So I think both could be true. One seems just as feasible to me as well, maybe the other one, this one seems the more feasible. The latter. So the former being that there's some kind of field of awareness or intelligence you did not have access to till you took a drug, and it's like a portal to access this field of information or another entity or an external, or that you heighten your own awareness, your ability to perceive. So you notice the birds flying away, the animals reacting a certain way, the wind, the ground moving, just things you wouldn't really give attention to or pay attention to, or kind of like Phenomena with John Travolta, that movie back in the day. Something similar. So it's like, it's still you, but it's you with, I mean, even using this picture as an example, additional layers of perception that you just didn't have interconnected before that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like both. It's got because the former is basically like this metaphysical explanation, and it's I think people are resistant to it just because it's metaphysical in nature and it's different. You can't really prove it, but I think a lot of people who have direct experience with this have experienced some kind of like way that information travels through boundaries that it shouldn't normally. Even if it's, say, you're there with somebody person to person, and you guys are kind of thinking the same thoughts, but a lot of people have had that kind of experience where they get some kind of information from nature and it comes to them and they're able to react in a certain type of way, and their response saves them from some kind of ill fate or something like that, you know what I mean? So that the proposal that there is a way that information is traveling from nature states to you through some kind of higher awareness situation, it's it's almost like too elusive to prove. What was the Albert Einstein quote? Something like God hides himself in coincidences in order to stay anonymous, or something like that. You know what I mean? That there's, if you're going to go and prove this part of it, it's going to escape your proof, but you're going to experience it if you
That's
look.
why everybody feels like they need that proof until they have the direct experience where some information that they got, that there's no, like, it's like something occurred to them. Like, how amazing is an occurrence? Like, apparently I knew this thing that I wish I knew, but I didn't know I know. And then all of a sudden I knew it. Right. And so, like, already that's like amazing, and it doesn't really have like a explanation for it. But when that occurrence ends up being something that, like, saves you time, saves your life, saves a loved one's life, something like that, immediately your need for proof of how that happened goes out the fucking window. You don't care a fuck how that happened. Right. You're just like, I'm so glad I knew that.
you're like floating around in a heightened spiritual state, a mystical state at that point in time. You're just riding the wave of coincidence control. And if there is some kind of entity that is there in a higher wavelength, higher plane, dimension, whatever, that is charged of this coincidence control, I guess I just wouldn't be surprised at all, just from the stuff that I've seen. Because like sometimes, like imagine you have a dream about something, and then say 3 days later that thing comes true. How did that information from that thing happening go back in time to you in that dream? There's no plain physics to explain this type of stuff. So it's sort of like, on some level, the rules are pretty different and we don't really know what they are. All we can do is collect our experiences and just have a purely observational reference for that kind of thing. Because if you can't like get a machine to take a photograph of it, or a voltage state of your like heightened experience or something, then no way you're going to be able to measure that. And you're going to have to, because it's such a common experience for people to have that kind of, like the dream or the psychic moment when you're tripping with friends or something, or you say something and then a few, like 2 seconds later it comes on the radio. It's something very specific.
Argument can be made, if your free association is good enough, every single dream is that. So everyone's experienced it. I mean, like, I think dream interpretation or symbol interpretation is probably one of the best, like, sober ways to work a person's free association, where like someone's telling you about this experience. It's a story that they had, but you're like, it didn't mean that. You spend the whole time trying to figure out what it actually meant, even though they're telling you. So they're like telling you a story without telling you the story, just telling you something that's like the story. And like, that's a fucking great training ground for free association.
Yeah, definitely.
If it's good enough, like, almost everything means everything, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like whether you're analyzing dreams or you're analyzing a vision you had, it's how does it make you feel? That's really the number one touchstone right there, because that sense of feeling is what really transmits a lot of the information about it. Like if you're having a dream about putting a lot of objects from one place to another, you can't just say like, "Oh, I like moving objects around." You might be thinking, "Oh, is there something in my life that's in disarray?" You do have to step into that meta sense and look at it metaphorically and see how that would relate to your life on that metaphorical level as well, right? Yeah, it totally makes sense.
yeah, I'm very direct to the feelings too. Like if someone ever comes to me with a dream and they were to say like I was moving a bunch of stuff around, I would be like, what kind of feeling did that generate inside of you? Did that make you nervous? Did that make you calmer? You were happy? Were you happy when the stuff got in the right place or when it was in the wrong place? Like, and that tells us like so much about what direction to go with the association.
So that's like step one of interpretation is that
Yeah.
feeling, and that isn't necessarily something that
For most
people are.
people in this day and age, step one is to go to Google and say, what does this mean
That's
in a dream?
right. So to intellectualize it, right?
True.
When you
Fucking
intellect,
misleading as fuck when you don't take this into account.
open a book and be like, what does the book say about moving objects around? It can be valuable, but that feeling, that is the touchstone, and that is it, and exactly, it's not the first thing that people necessarily commonly come to. I don't know what percentage, but I think it can be like a very enlightening moment for people to realize, wow, the way that I feel about this thing that I'm seeing in my mind's eye, when it comes down to it, the way I feel about that is the important thing, and that's where I'm going to draw this meaning from, and perhaps something that can help me in some kind of way, or at least shed light.
Do you feel like the standard modern human honors their feelings?
No, I think like we really are. It's part of our culture to like we'll say facts over feelings type of thing, and the feelings are part of the facts. There's a lot of specific context to that, but no, I think like me myself, anytime that I enter into some kind of psychedelic state, I feel like now I'm honoring my feelings in a way that just a few moments ago I was not necessarily doing in my sober state of mind. So I'm just going to say, yeah, like on a just everybody on some level, and that's built into society, is a reflection of that in society where people want to undermine feelings or they use it as a gaslighting thing, just like, oh, that's just your
Big
feelings.
true. Big
How
true right
how
there.
would how would you differentiate because the need of our feelings sometimes lying to us, if you will. They're not never
Oh,
lying.
yeah.
Let me fill that out. So like your feelings aren't ever lying to you. Your feelings are legitimate. They're there for legitimate reasons. For something you experienced in the past, something you're predicting might happen in the future. There's legitimate reasons, logical, sensical reasons. Your feelings are what they are. However, if we just obey those feelings, if you will, maybe we're avoiding something positive to us because of a past traumatic experience, because we're
Yeah.
following our feelings. They're saying bad, don't go there, but really it could be good. Like where's the balance between following your feelings or I guess
That's
acknowledging?
totally, well, that's case by case basis, because you're totally right. It's that's where a balance lies, and you've got to be just fully judicious about it and evaluate that on the case basis. Because yeah, if somebody is basically misinterpreting reality by virtue of traumas that they've happened in one way or another, they're overtaken by these feelings, and they can't engage in a process where they're uh, um, thinking it through from the big picture, right? And but it's so that you definitely can't just uplift feelings themselves onto this kind of pedestal. I think you certainly can in a moment where you're in like a therapeutic moment.
Mm,
If you're there and you're tripping, or somebody's there with you and they're feeling something, even if they're dead wrong, you can sit with them for a moment and let them get that feeling out before you work it out. Or you're like, wait, are you sure it happened that way? Like, let's
mm,
let's I think that communication is the thing where you have your perception of the world, and you have to match that to the real world, and you've got to, there's only certain ways to do it. Like you could have seen something happen out there, and you talk to other people about it, and they tell you that it's totally different from what you saw, and you can be totally wrong, and you saw what you saw, and you've got to come to some way with like all these different information sources and decide how do your feelings relate to those different levels of proof. Do my feelings and do my perceptions go above that? And you can sense when people will do that on a biased way. They'll their own feelings over like their perceptions of reality kind of thing. So it seems really, really case by case. It gets kind of specific down to it, but yeah, I think that's part of why it's considered to be bad, and especially you've got things like negative feelings, quote unquote negative feelings like anger and shame and stuff. It's, yeah, you can call them negative because they don't feel good, you know what I mean? But people will call them negative as in you shouldn't experience those. You don't want to experience those. You don't want to spend time in those states. And when you're in a therapeutic moment, you've got to go through all those different things.
Mm.
Got to feel guilt sometimes if you fucked up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think
So
we have a lot of failure in association with this too, where people they think that their emotion happens because of this, and they've like decided on that, and so that's why it is. When it's probably like an education thing, really, in this regard. That like it's not that though.
right.
They have this belief that it is that, and then they like substantiate that into their position, and it substantiates their feeling, when really like their feeling is something like they could do something about that. They could adjust that if they were so inclined, but they've basically associated themselves into a position where it's outside of their control. I am this way because of what my past was. It's like, no, you are this way because you continue to reiterate the same version of what your past created you into at a
Right.
certain point in time, and you're not like making something new. So that association is functionally false,
Yeah.
but they treat it as true. And
Yeah. That's like that breakdown between their inner world perception and the outer world reality,
Sure.
and that's why it's got to be on the case by case basis, because you can't take one person and say they're going to be good at this all the time. You can't say take one situation or one entity of one kind or another. No matter what, there's gonna be a breakdown between their inner perceptions of the data they've got inside of their mind and what's actually happening out in reality. And it could be a computer, it could be like an AI or something, and its internal reality is not matching the external reality. Anytime there is that breakdown there, that's where it's you've got the evidence of the breakdown. What you're talking about there is definitely like the evidence of the breakdown, evidence of the bias, and there's it's almost like a hell state of kinds, of some sort, where you're believing something is untrue just because you're indulging your own weakness. You know what I mean? That's kind of like a hell state in a certain kind of way. And I
yeah,
think
and I think sometimes that weakness is perceived as a strength just because it's more comfortable than another state would be. And then we end up in these like false associations that we'll stick to because they allow us to continue that thing that we know rather than experience something that we don't know.
Yeah. And this the when you have to hold and perpetuate these false realities over time, that takes a lot more energy than just like going through that freaking thing. And I'm imagining Eric Cartman in the episode where Cesar Millan comes over and like shakes the demon out of him and shit. Like, you have your moment, let that go. That takes a lot. That takes a certain kind of energy. A lot of people aren't capable of it. And so in lieu of doing that, they will just create that kind of like broken mind state. And yeah, just it has tremendously antisocial implications. We see it many times in our own lives, just any individual does. How misunderstandings, we're basically talking about misunderstandings.
Mm.
And how the effects can be really devastating. And the way the insecurity plays into this, and when we imagine what are the reasons why people are insecure, we're talking about like a huge socioeconomic problem, which I'm sure you could factor in elements like poverty and stuff into it as well. But in general, there's definitely an issue in terms of people not only recognizing their feelings, but as we're talking about here, matching those feelings to reality and caring to do that, not being some kind of solipsistic mirror box where they just don't care about the outside world. It's
Which
some of
sometimes
those
seems like a really good out, right? Like, so you can definitely get to a position where you're like, this shit is stupid, I just don't care. And like, I just don't care seems like probably the most effective way to get out of the situation.
Well, then there's
Yeah.
some things like let's see if I can get the mouse pulled up on this thing. So like when you have beliefs about something, so your belief about a past situation, it's like one of these ingrained lines. I think the mouse is showing up on the screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's one of these ingrained lines you have here. Say it's past trauma or something, but it's like a core belief system. Let's say it's ingrained in your subconscious, but all these things that pass by that, they're cross-referencing with this perceived reality.
Yes.
And then when you can do this and intermix, add more points of reference to this one, when it all settles, maybe this one isn't so prominent, or maybe this one changes shape, or maybe changes direction, because
Yeah,
it's
just
all in the neurology. If you want to get down to computers and data and stuff, like, you know, our actual biology, and they take that of our anthropomorphized experience and the psychology of it, like this actual neurology, we're changing our neurology. So like, you know, tapping and things you can do, and having bad memories or experiences can also redirect these neural pathways.
that's perfect. That's a great way of explaining it. Like I remember seeing an interview with the founder of Maps, and he was talking about MDMA, and in particular, it's when you are, um, reliving, imagining a past traumatic situation, the certain kind of brain chemistry that comes up, that brings up defenses and all that. MDMA interacts with that and allows it to be surrounded in sort of a safety. You know what I mean? And so you can take that same traumatic memory and process it in a way where you don't. It's like not as traumatic, and it's not as pointlessly traumatic as it is if you're sitting and thinking about it in your normal sober life. You know what I mean? You'll have that moment where it's sort of surrounded in just therapeutic brain chemistry or something, and so you can process that and create different interpretations, which
Yeah.
exactly like you're talking about, just like directly adjacent to it, but slightly different way of thinking about, a slightly different way of looking at yourself in it. Perfect. It's
Yeah,
totally.
because think about these traumas or whatever, past situations, past relationships, something growing up. I mean, who knows what could happen? But in your daily life, whenever you touch on that, like if that thought comes to mind or something triggers it, it just shoots down this whole pathway. And then all the sparking pathways, they're preset. It just sends you on a pathway of feelings come with that, anxiety states or different things. And so when you're in this state where everything's hyper mixed, that memory may come to mind, but it immediately explodes off like 12 other perceptions or insights or pathways. And sometimes it's not even anthropomorphized or conscious. This could be some totally amorphous experience that you have, but it's all this is happening. And that's where it
I
can,
think it
help
really
your
is anyways.
depression.
I
And
mean, this is like an attempt at a logical modeling, but
yeah,
whenever we end up with a logical modeling and it looks like the thing on the right side, we
mm,
know that like a logical model wasn't actually realistic for this, right? Like it's got all kinds of interconnected data points that are going all over the place, and like even the logical graph looks like utter fucking chaos. You know what I mean? And
how
that
would
kind of
you,
tells you that you have like it's not linear and logical like that.
so how would you, so like on one hand, I'd say that everything, I'm trying to think if this applies to everything. What thing is truly illogical? Because even illogical things seem to have a connection to a logical pathway that launched it into an illogical point. So like, it seems like there's always some kind of
I think
interconnectivity.
everything is illogical. I believe the human mind has the capability to logic anything.
Hmm.
And that's what we end up seeing with graphs like this. It's like the experience of psilocybin cannot really actually be modeled with a graph. You have to actually have it and see what it's really like.
Yeah,
And the expression of it is not something that will ever be captured by like a single image. So
totally.
functionally, it is an illogical thing in and of itself. Like I'm having this experience and I feel this way and I don't know why. Like I haven't come up with any reason for that. But if we take the time in either like preparation or integration outside of a psychedelic experience, we can create tools that allow you to logic it in the moment, or utilize tools to logic it in an after the fact kind of way. And
Mm.
then we can bring logic to an illogical situation. But really, like the whole of experience itself is functionally illogical. We're just capable of overlaying logic onto it. That's my belief, at least.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it seems like this type of thing is there to just kind of jog your mind about associations, and
Yeah.
but I totally agree with your point.
This graph does really good at going like, wow, maybe my brain could do a lot more. You know what I mean? If nothing else, it does super good at capturing that. You're like, wait a minute. I
Yeah.
thought like when my brain was like good, it was like a perfect egg. And then when it was on drugs, it was cracked and frying in a pan. You mean to tell me it could be better if I was on drugs? And it's like, yes, I do mean to tell you it could be better in certain
Yeah.
ways if you were
And
on
even
drugs.
extend this out beyond just your brain. I mean, this is all of your inner neurology, your interconnection, the senses in your body, cellular
Sure,
memory.
and
I
that's
mean,
a
there's a
really
lot of
good
interconnecting.
point too, like where is your mind really? Is your mind just inside of your brain? Probably not. That's not really an effective way to look at it. And so that this is broader. This isn't just what's happening in my brain. This is interconnectivity of feeling and well, all the things that we have placed logic on. feelings, thoughts, experience, whatever. And then also all this other data that we maybe don't have compartmentalized yet, but we do have some kind of reaction from it. And what this kind of like any kind of graph like this is basically mapping calls and responses. When this area lights up, this area responds. So let's draw a line in between them. When that happens many times, we make the line thicker, basically. But it's showing that there's like a bunch of call and response. And it's like the call is logical, the response is logical, but the interaction of the two of them is never really actually logical. It could go anywhere, really.
Well, or I mean, on a macro scale, anywhere, but on a finite scale, I mean, I think there's logical reasons. Like, oh, it makes sense why that fired off that way and that connected to that, even though on a macro scale, it's all, seemingly random, that there's actually order and function to things. I mean, that's the constant reality that we're in, right? On micro level, there's always some form of order. On a macro level, there's some form of
it can be made. Order can be placed on it. I don't know whether there is actually order.
All right.
Yeah. I know that you can make sense out of it.
Isn't this where chaos theory comes into it? Where
Yes.
you've got like seemingly chaotic entities, and then they're finding ways to see order in it.
Right.
Yeah. That kind of.
And I think kind of like one of the brilliance of just any human experience is even if you're a bumbling fucking idiot, you're still actually capable of creating this order inside of what is otherwise an illogical, chaotic experience that really actually doesn't make anything, but you become something out of it. And you don't have to be good at anything for that. That's your fucking default state. And that's brilliant. Like, that's a crazy level of artistic genius that, like, even artistic geniuses inside of our society generally don't actually come up to a bar that's anywhere near that. And that's actually the default of the human. Like, you don't have to get any better and you're already that.
Yeah.
That's fucking sweet. That's like everybody's like, man, I wish I had this car when everybody's driving around in like sick ass Lamborghinis. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if we were like in reality, actually, where like people drove Ford Tauruses, we would all be like, this car is awesome. But instead, since everybody's in Lamborghinis, we're like, man, I need the upgraded Lamborghini. You know what I mean? I'm not good enough until I got the upgraded Lamborghini. Like, yeah, I got a Lamborghini, but they could have a sunroof.
Are you calling for abolishing luxury goods? Is that what's going on here?
No, I think people should dive into them as much as they want to, actually. I mean, I've had the grace in my life of actually driving a Ferrari, and there ain't a fucking chance I would let somebody take it away from me because it's amazingly fun. Like, what an incredible machine, So I think people should do whatever the fuck they want, man. You want to live all lavish, luxurious life and sip caviar off of prostitutes' chests? Like, that's fine with me, dude. That's not what I do with my life. But like, if that's how you want to spend your money, okay, whatever. You made it,
Yeah, enough. Caviar can be pretty good. So.
And that's, I mean, that goes along the same dynamic too. I mean, I think that there's some people, I mean, there's a lot of times people talk about having a different purpose or mission that they've incarnated with here or that they have in this life, and it's all well and good. I think we have many purpose that we determine for ourselves from whatever reasons throughout life, esoteric or, exoteric.
A pot of purposes.
Yeah, or something, or other dynamic. We have different purposes that drive us at different times in our life. But, I think some people are here just for beer, sex, and pizza, man. I mean, that's the reason they're here. And
why can't that be a purpose too?
Yeah, that's totally a purpose.
One person be here to save the world and one person be here to love the shit out of Dale Earnhardt Jr.?
100%.
Like, that's fine. Yep. Cool. Like, seems menial to me.
What do you think, Adam? What are you here for? What's your purpose on
this
planet?
My purpose here, like I think the beer, sex, and pizza, that's me. I feel like you're talking and this whole time you're describing me and I'm just listening. I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
And
this is me.
I just had pizza earlier today. It was so good.
You heard it here, folks. Adam is on this earth for beer, sex, and pizza. Look how knowledgeable he is, educated, and he takes his own family portraits.
I feel like that's basically my purpose too. You would just abstract it into things that are equally menial, but maybe have a different title on them.
Yeah.
Well, like replace one of those with video games.
Right.
You got me.
Yeah, I mean, with just humans enjoying being human, it's sort of like just good enjoying the walk of life. Seems simple enough. What was the Alan Watts good talk where he talks about purpose and he's relating it to dancing, where you don't start on the floor with your feet here and intending to end up at a specific place over there. You're just dancing to dance and enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a decent way to describe it. But
yeah,
otherwise, I mean, like purpose. It's like a meaning, and people, we're a life form that is designed to attach meaning to stuff, and we can do that well, we can do that poorly, right? So the way that we attach meaning in that type of way is going to determine so much of it as well.
Yeah, I've been very good at attaching meaning to meaningless things in my life. Not gonna lie.
Oh yeah.
I think
I
it's
found
essential.
meaning inside of them, but man,
Well, ironic. I mean,
they're not.
everything is meaningless to us unless we attach meaning to it.
True.
So it's
True.
only
Yeah.
meaningless necessarily in
That's
hindsight.
the
Yes,
illogical,
but
logical thing again, though, right there. Is that like life is functionally meaningless unless you derive some meaning from it, and
right.
Yeah.
so
It's like the tree that falls in the woods. Like, did that mean anything? No. Then
Didn't
guess-
to you, maybe, but like, that's
who
the thing that's like
cares?
repeatedly amazing to me, I guess, throughout life. I would say adulthood, but really, I guess, like, well, I don't know, adulthood, childhood's kind of there's a generic section for that for all humans, I guess, of the development of our neurology and gaining even a perception of a worldview. But like once you get into some form of autonomous operation, in your mind and your experience of the world, where you have to attach meaning just to get out of bed in the morning, let alone enjoy life or whatever, to different things. It's amazing how the ebbs and flows of life or seasons, certain things are super meaningful, but they just
when do you
are
think
totally
that really
meaningless.
starts? Like that moment in a person's life where they suddenly like they're not just like, well, maybe you can remember back to a time where you were a kid where you like woke up and then you were just off doing shit for like the rest of the day. But like then there was some point in your life where maybe you woke up and you were like, what is the reason to get up today? Why do you think that starts in people's lives?
The day school started and you had to get to bed 6 a.m.
Oh, totally.
What
No,
is
definitely.
the reason I have to actually get up today?
Like, I remember that so clearly, just being in high school and going to school just because I wanted to see adorable women, see pretty girls.
Hell yeah,
And I was like waking up,
big
I'm like, I'm gonna go and it's gonna be cool, and that's why. And
Yeah,
it
you
was
like
like really
talk
conscious
yourself
to the
into it.
reason. Yeah, just honestly, you can see that's very logical as well. It's the beer, sex, and pizza thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think like maybe there's even like a precursor to all of these, which is where you think you know something. Like you're waking up into the day going, the reason to wake up for today is X, or like I'm gonna be doing this, so I'm gonna generate a reason for it. When like in actuality, with what life has the possibility for, you have no idea what's going to happen today. You have like you're pretty sure it's like within this realm of probability, and it's most likely going to go this way, but you don't actually know. I mean, like, what if you love basketball and you went to school just to see the pretty women there, but for some reason, fucking Kobe Bryant showed up today? Like, what the hell? Why is Kobe Bryant at the school? This is the coolest day ever in the history of school.
yeah.
And clearly the reason to get up to go to school was to fucking see Kobe Bryant, but I had no idea he was going to show up.
It's like it becomes a secondary meaning or something like that. No,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, and there's an interesting point here, because when people get into psychedelics, they'll have this experience where they have it, like they see a version of themselves that is choosing to be themselves when they wake up in their life and their body here today.
Yeah.
Sort of like a decision to incarnate, type of an incarnation decision. Seems to relate here on some level, because there's a purpose. It seems like it could be a complete illusory purpose. There's no way to test it. It's metaphysical, that kind of thing. But that's a pretty good purpose when you wake up and you're just like, oh, I guess I have a day. I'm here and I'm a me and I have a day. So let's do this.
And
let's see what
like,
happens.
Simplify.
I feel like in a lot of ways, like that's contentment in that regard, to wake up and be like, well, today the reason to get up is because I can get up today.
Yeah, it just happened.
The
So
reason to
now
get up today,
the
I will
game.
find out at the end of the day. 'Cause right now, I'm just up. So,
Or maybe even so you're getting up more instead of a statement, but a question mindset, where it's like you get up and you're like, what the fuck is the reason to get up today? Let's go see. You know what
Just
I
like,
mean?
what? Okay.
Yeah, like, what is
right.
this? Wait a minute. You mean to tell me I woke up again? There must be a reason for this. I'm going to go find it.
I'm gonna write a letter. Yeah.
I think like that would probably be a really better. I'm actually going to try that. This was like a micro epiphany for me, because I was like, I could get up asking a question instead. I have like a whole routine that I've used over years. It's been very beneficial for me, that has to do with life review and statements inside of like my hypnagogic state. And I'm going to like reformat it entirely and not say anything and just ask like questions, simple ones that entice me to go and look for the answer and see what happens in my life.
Sometimes when you do that, you get sort of this instant response inside of your mind's eye, and you're just like, oh, wow, cool. There's a little bit of a glad I asked that question too. That's rad.
Hopefully that's the case, because that can definitely happen the other way too, where you're like, fucking shouldn't ask that question. I've ran into a lot of those, especially with the old psychedelics, like balls deep in a psychedelic trip and then asking yourself something that you didn't really want to think about. And then like you're just like you are in that motherfucker now, and you cannot get out. Like you definitely take a moment where you're like, well, shouldn't ask that, boys.
Yeah. The problem is you didn't ask the question here. You asked a question here, and too late.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that like thinking about my kid's face would send me into like 8 hours of reliving every emotion that I think my child might have had since he was born.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Totally.
But like, 3 hours into doing that, I'm like, this is pretty fucking heavy. I wish I wouldn't have asked that question.
But I'm glad I did on some level.
On a lot of levels I am, but in the moment I'm kind of like, maybe not, dude. Probably could have had a better night.
A moment of regret, I guess.
Yeah. That's weird, because I'm noticing with that when I go into psychedelic experiences, or I have that for most of my life. When I went into psychedelic experiences, it really was like a questioning space where I was like, well, let's see what's going to happen. And they got worse when I got like some opinion that I thought that I knew what was going to happen. I don't like that.
Right.
I think I'm going to start making less statements about reality.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm realizing through this conversation that I've injected a lot of problems into my life that actually I think the core of them was I thought I knew. And it's ridiculous, actually, objectively speaking, that I would have actually known in those locations. But I think that can put us into a position where like our perception's kind of fucked.
Totally, like that's the Socratic thing, right? That's like the first part of it is stating that you know nothing, because at that point in time it's more about letting go of the insecure need to know, right? And just re-evaluating it on a really neutral playing field and be like, do I know or do I not know? What additional information is there? Let's open this whole line of inquiry, because that in itself is like a big energy consuming quest that you have to go on with this individual stuff. And so a lot of people don't have energy, and we're really not taught. There's no education system for that. We're kind of innovating that ourselves in terms of how to even like ask these questions when you want to answer, like, oh, how did 9/11 really happen the way I said it did? And you start going down that, and you're like, how do I make a lot of people get totally confused and going in there, because there's no way truth from false like that.
Purely from the aspect of like trying to obtain more information, do you think that, would you agree, because I definitely think that it's actually more beneficial to come into the thing being like, okay, so I don't know shit, and because like even if you do know stuff about it, like completely reformatting your understanding of it from the ground up oftentimes leads to knowing new shit.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's and like that takes care of the insecurity, because if you start off, the number one thing is getting rid of the insecurity, because if you don't have the insecurity, then you can relearn the basic concepts that you missed and all that stuff. But what you're talking about is almost like a surefire way to do it. It's like, look, I'm just gonna like pretend I don't know anything here. I get it. I do know X amount of stuff, but I'm just gonna pretend that I don't know anything, so I don't have to pretend that I'm like the master of this who has nothing to learn and only has something to teach. Because that's the sort of foolish state. That's the foolish teacher state. And when you're in the state of your student, you know what I mean, perpetual student type of thing, you can learn. You can be open to learning, and you're not resistant. And if you feel the resistance, you can deal with it. Because you're just going to come upon times when people trigger something about you, and you're just like, that can't be right, and I'm angry to hear that. And then they keep talking, you're just like, wait a second, like this kind of sounds like they're right, and like I need to follow. So if you're in a place where you can actually listen and be open to it, that's really something that our whole fucking society could get a lot of right now, and back in time, anytime. We call it epistemic closure, like when you are unable to open up your knowledge to new information. So being epistemically closed is sort of like the worst, stupidest, most evil thing in the world to the psychedelic dimension. You know what I mean? They will punish you for that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, if you're basically being resistant and saying like, no, the thought has to be this way. It's like, really, motherfucker, are you sure about that?
Well, even the same thing with the image. So this is our preconceived notions. No, this has to be this way, and this only connects to this and to this. That is it. And it's like, nope.
Actually, it's over here, and you're like, no, it's not. And it's like, actually, it is.
Yeah. It's like yes, and this.
Yeah, it's improv. It's improv versus like scripted acting, right? It's always
the best part about all this too. This isn't external information. Now, this may be bringing to mind external information, but this is all inside of you. This is your own perception of things. Sure. So it's different than learning new external information, having to process it through your normal filters. It's like these experiences help to interconnect all those things. So there's nowhere to run. I mean, it's all inside of you.
I feel like there's some psychedelic situations where you could basically draw that like there's just as many lines, but they all go to the same point. And it's like that's like that fucking horrible loop state where you like feel like you keep doing different things, and then you're like, wait, this is the same shit. Fuck.
Yeah. You could turn this 90 degrees and you see where there's one node that it just keeps all those loop around through each time.
You could entitle this picture here "Rude Awakening."
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Turn it 90 degrees, stuck in a rude awakening.
Yeah.
Over and over. Do you have any, Adam, on that subject, do you have any experiences that to this day you haven't figured out, or you kind of, I don't know if regret maybe it's too strong of a word, but something that you're just like, dude, that I don't know. I don't even know if I would. Yeah.
No, definitely not. I mean, like I feel like I got really good context, I guess, in whether we're talking about psychedelic experiences or just life experiences. I feel like I'm in a really good place about that. I feel like I got a good context where I'm like holding myself to account for stuff, but also being compassionate about things. And my reasoning behind doing stuff and getting myself in certain types of trouble or whatever, it's not really a mystery to me. And thankfully, like my psychedelic experiences, I've been able to interpret them pretty thoroughly, I guess. And it's unfolding, I guess, is that
do you have a process that you apply to the understanding of your psychedelic experiences, or do you just like kind of let the information emerge throughout your life?
Option B, definitely, because it's just the feeling, like just feel it, and what comes to you through that feeling, what kind of telepathy, what kind of impressions, because when you're looking at some of these, especially like on DMT or these really abstract states, very intense artwork, things that you can't really describe, and all this sensory stuff, which is just beyond, you can't just turn into sounds and stuff. You're sort of entering into different senses. You can't really describe it. What's the point of that? And when you think about it, that's all noise. The most important stuff is that what are you feeling? What are you thinking when you're looking at that? And so those things that are happening in the personal dimension with you that need to be shown, need to be revealed to you, that you're hiding from yourself, kind of thing. That's what it tends to go to and work on, and when you start moving through that stuff, you go through the training about how to just stop piling that stuff on, how to stop sweeping stuff under the rug for yourself. And it's not like you're going to leave a perfect person or anything, but you've taken a different tack on your own perceptions in this exact way we've been talking about, and matching this internal reality with the external reality, and creating a kind of maturity about that, about I'm going to be more dynamic about my input output from this reality. I'm not just going to let what everybody says affect me, and I'm not going to let nothing affect me. I'm going to have this kind of dynamic, intelligent, porous barrier where I let the smart stuff in and like keep this stupid stuff shielded out. I'm going to, and that just whatever's making those decisions about when the barrier opens and closes, that's going to determine a lot about me, what kind of person I am and what kind of results I have in life. So to me, that's like an invitation for humility, like if you bump somebody's door when you open your door in the parking lot or something, you don't have to get mad at them because you did that, right? True. You can stop and be just like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, you know what I mean? Just like,
yeah.
And that really fundamentally changes a lot of personal interactions. And for a lot of people with different personality types, I think those kind of experiences would be really valuable. That's what I consider to be at the core of my own psychedelic experiences, is just how to deal with my own personal blind spot, right? So, because everything else seems to be downstream of that. where that's how you see is what you get type of territory.
Sure.
So if you are really resistant to good information that's coming your way, you're going to be a different person than if you're dynamic about it and taking the good and not taking the bad. But that's everything. All the roads come to that, and in terms of our own behavior, the way we see ourselves, that kind of thing. And so, um, I mean, that's coming off the question of, do I see stuff that I still have trouble interpreting and all that, and that's why I feel like I don't, because it puts a lot of stuff in perspective, but I think like that's why it's important to keep in touch. It's why it's important to go back and say whatever vehicle you use to get there, just so you can take a break from like option A up there and go into option B and see if anything needs to rude awakening, snap over a little bit.
Yeah. It seems with your approach too that you just kind of like let it organically emerge by tapping into the feelings, that there probably wouldn't be a lot of like rush, like a rush order on figuring it out. And so there's probably not that feeling of like, oh, well, I haven't figured this part out, or I regret not figuring that out, or it feels like any kind of a void, because you're really just like waiting for something to emerge into space that you like have generated for it.
Yeah, and I mean that really comes into play when we're talking about, especially DMT. You'll go in and you'll hear a lot of stuff, and you come back and you'll just forget it. And ultimately, that comes into play here, where it seems like that's part of that experience, is that you're just supposed to forget it, and it's not like, okay, I forgot it, I guess it's not important anyway. No, you knew it was important, but you forgot it, and like that's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
being able to just like accept the fact that like, oh, didn't get that part. That'll happen.
Yeah, or it happens somewhere on a deeper level. Like sometimes you could really feel stuff on a deep level get shifted and people see themselves get cut up and put back together in totally different way. What exactly is happening there? What kind of things are changing there? This is where, like you were talking about when we're looking at this graph here with these two pictures, not all of that's happening in a logical frame of mind. Some of that is happening on a subconscious. Even when you're tripping, it's not like all of your subconscious is available to you while you're tripping, just some of it.
Yeah, and most of the time you're just making some type of symbolic association, right? Like in a lot of my like psychedelic spaces, just before I kind of like lost a knowingness of self, I've experienced like myself being like consumed or destroyed or evaporated, or some kind of weird thing happened like that oftentimes was really like a whoa, what the fuck is going on kind of experience. But on the other side of it, you can kind of see that that's really just like a way that your mind was projecting that like there's like this destruction, or you're breaking down a barrier and it's not going to be the same anymore. And that has some type of association to my meanness, which I also associate my body to. So of course I just watched my body get destroyed because my meanness just stepped out of the picture.
Right.
But
Yeah,
so
definitely.
like that didn't really happen. I didn't really get consumed by a gigantic snake that materialized from the floor and was seemingly made of liquid. But I realized that that was the way that my mind envisioned me moving to a different format of operation.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Ram Dass was just talking or wrote a long time ago about when he took mushrooms that Timothy Leary gave to him. He saw, I think he was seated in a chair or something, and he saw next to him projected the different roles that he played in society, like him as a student, him playing whatever musical instrument, him the pilot, and he saw those things just being evaporated. And he was able to see that those different parts of him, how much like energy and he'd been investing into that, and how seeing them all just like disappear as if they were unimportant, and just actually focusing on the unimportance of those changed his priorities, right? Yeah, it's definitely, this is taking place in the mind's eye. Even if your eyes are open, even if your eyes are open, you're seeing real shit. You still are working in your mind's eye. But when you see stuff that's basically hallucination, that is your mind's eye sort of impinging on reality, right?
I think in a lot of ways we have like a mass scale hallucination going on right now, in the sense that people look at a lot of the world as being like this huge breakdown of society, or that everything's going wrong, where like if you actually look at the history, it's kind of just business as usual for the most part. Like shit's changing, governments are making decisions based off of things that are happening in the moment. Some people are getting sick, and like if you take it on, you like
there's lobbyists, there's people who have money that have agendas. It's all been going for a very long time.
Sure, there's all kinds of shit that's like happening, but people are experiencing it in a different way. But in a lot of ways, also like inside of the new age movement or whatever you want to call it, they've been like expecting, and they are now feel they are experiencing this process of like this grander awakening, and that a lot of people are like coming to realize that. And I honestly feel like in a lot of ways, like their perspective of what's going on in the world is matching their lack of perspective of what's going on inside of them. But then they share that as though that is basically their subjective experience of reality and holds truth as that, when it doesn't. Like subjective experience of reality doesn't really hold truth. It's like subjective experience of reality. But when they share that with other people and they start corroborating and stuff, then they come up with these very grandiose ideas that there's something actually happening outside that may just as likely be a similarity of things that are happening inside. And that's just some like associative way that both those individuals can see that that is what feels true in their life.
I told you there's I have a couple friends of mine who are very upset with me right now about this because I'm not acknowledging that phenomenon that you're talking about, because they will in their ayahuasca visions they will see that certain stuff that they're talking about on a political social level is being confirmed as true in their visions.
Right.
And so they basically cite themselves.
Have they studied cognitive bias at all?
Exactly. If you cite your visions as authority and you have no other authority there, like that's just the longest branch to be out on in the world, especially when you're something, exactly, awakening type of stuff. And what does awakening mean?
Getting
And
up in the morning, as far as I'm concerned.
that's what I think we established. Yeah. But you're right, is that because part of the issue with the New Age movement that it did uplift that subjective reality onto a pedestal, and so everybody has their own reality, and that is true. It's a what they call normative moral relativism.
Yeah.
Where where everybody has their own reality, and that's true, and you can have your own reality, I can have my own. And what's true in your reality doesn't have to be true in my reality, because they're just separate. And that's not true.
Yeah, and then there's no reason for us to ever interact. I'll just go live in a cave and you can live in your own, and then humanity will cease and it will be good.
Right. Well, people found a way to, still unite on New Age values, but still keep these largely separate worlds.
Right.
And so, what we're talking about in terms of this phenomenon of people taking subjective reality, and your visions are definitely your subjective reality, and if you're saying using those to corroborate the reality of other people, this is a mass hallucination. It's exactly what that is.
Well, there's a huge battle in the psychedelic realm over like, is that a projection of your subjective reality, or is that some divination into a clearer view of objective reality? And I think people sit on two sides of that fence, and I don't really think that fence is talked about too much inside of space, but it is a great divide that sits inside of the psychedelic community.
Right.
Some people in the psychedelic community are pretty sure you're just getting a better look at your own head. Some other people think they are the next Nostradamus. They just got to take a tab of this in order to do it. And I mean, maybe both are true. I don't know which one's true. I know which side of the fence I'm on. That's all I really know, and that's all I really can know.
No, totally. I mean, that I've thought about this a lot, and this definitely would like played into my own experience, because it was like when you're seeing all this fantastic stuff, you've got to like you believe it's real at first. You can't not believe it's real.
It feels pretty fucking real in the moment,
right? And like ultimately, this seems to be the perfect type of issue where you put yourself back in the question mark instead of choosing one side or the other. Where you're like I get, there's no way to know. It could be real. Like,
yeah, but you have to like willfully choose that I don't know. Despite the fact I've gathered more evidence, I still don't know. Human mind don't seem, or at least modern human mind doesn't seem to like to take that pathway. It seems to be one of these black spots inside the placebo here.
I think
totally.
The biggest part is just having collective humility, I guess, in that dynamic, to be able to dialogue, to be open to look at every experience you've had, to be able to contrast it with other people's, with your own, relook at them again. Maybe it's not internal, maybe it's coming from external, maybe it's not coming from external, maybe it's all internal, and just being able to take everyone subjectively.
Well, you got to have enough confidence in what you know to admit, that you don't know certain shit. And so when you're insecure about your knowingness, then you start trying to act like you know all kinds of shit that you don't know.
That's
Look
that's
at
where
teenagers.
okay.
Teenagers fucking know everything about the world, right? We were all teenagers and we knew everything then, and somehow we've now realized that we are all idiots. How did that happen? You know, insecurity was
Some
the
of them
thing
are
that told us
cool.
we knew so
You're
much
right.
shit, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that socially, once we understand it and identify it, we can take that down a notch and stop pretending that people need to like hoard knowledge and hoard trivia information in order to be, interesting on this wavelength here.
Yeah,
Um,
does knowing more make you better in any actual way? You know, like we treat it like it's something that makes you better. Like if I'm smarter, I'm better than other people, but that's not actually a direct thing. Like
Well, it can
being
work.
smarter does not mean your life is better.
And it can
That
work in
doesn't
reverse
mean that.
too if it's based on perception. Just because you have knowledge, it's how you wield that knowledge. How much do you share? When do you share it? How do you share it? How do you articulate it? How do you present that in a
Right.
conversation? Are
Well,
you
if you're a
actually adding to
smart
the
guy and you
conversation
still
or
make
dominating the
mistakes, you're even
conversation?
more of a dumbass than a dumbass that makes mistakes. You know what I mean? Like we actually held you to some standard. Like, but come on, you're a smart guy. You can do better than that. You know, someone will say, and it seems logical. But it's also like, yeah, just because he's a smart guy and does astrophysics doesn't mean he understands how to like navigate the emotions of a woman.
no,
So
and there can be deficits, for that reason as well. And if that's totally natural, I mean, we don't have a holodeck where we could send people to learn how to like pick somebody up at a bar or something like that.
that would be sick, though.
Yeah.
I would
Although I
probably,
think
I've
if we had
never
holodecks
been
for
good
that, we
with
probably
that.
wouldn't have bars anymore. You know?
True. We'd have synth hall, right? Or whatever.
Yeah. You talked my language. I just finished all 3 series of Star Trek that are on Netflix. Like all the 90s series.
Oh, that's
One
cool.
1.5 speed. It's the only way I could do it. 1 of
What do
speed.
you-
How
Just
many
killed
episodes
speed.
is a season of Star Trek?
20-ish.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
This is how so weird. Like it felt as a kid, it felt like a season of Star Trek must have at least been 500 episodes or something. You know what I mean? Like you don't really have any relevance of it or
Yeah.
like any type of bounding of space or anything. Like it's on all
Yeah.
the time, right? Like so when's the season over?
Yeah.
I had no idea. 20
They
is
have
still
really
pretty long. Like most
they
shows
carry
don't have.
out. Yeah, because they were doing it. I think it was a full season back in the day. What was it, September to May or June? You know, the full actual TV season we'd watch every week before you could Netflix things. Just watch a whole season release at once. I
Right.
can't even imagine. Like that's a subtle change, if you will, about culture. I could not imagine going back to having to wait like a week to watch episodes. Like I'll wait for seasons to come out for
Oh, yeah.
years sometimes till I can binge watch. Like I'll watch an episode 2. I'm like, this is really good, but I'm not going to waste my time watching this every week. So in a couple
Yeah,
years, I'll
you're
go
like
back and binge
avoiding
it.
people talking about it and shit, and like scrolling quickly past content that seems to be associated to
Or-
it because you're like, nope, nope, nope,
Yeah,
nope, not
well,
watching that
even-
until June.
Even like Star Trek, I've seen most of Star Treks growing up, and so I remember certain episodes and things. And even like, so the thing that's holding me back from moving on, there's 3 more series. There's like Discovery. They're all on CBS, and you have to pay the CBS app. They're on
Yeah.
Discovery, Picard, and there's one called Lower Decks. It's a cartoon, and
Oh,
apparently it's
okay.
pretty good. It's all canon, but they're single speed on the app, and you can't do picture in picture. So I always multitask. If I'm watching it or something, I'm doing other things on my phone. I'm doing whatever, and you can't turn up the speed. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll wait a couple years, I guess, or wait until it's on Netflix.
Somebody
CBS.
port to it, YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, I
CBS
can't do
has
it or
lots of
torrent it or something,
customers.
I guess. But
Just wait a couple more
mean-
years until CBS dies, and then their content will be free.
Yeah, they'll be consumed by somebody else. I saw on Wikipedia, what is Rage Against the Machine did a music video with Michael Moore down at Wall Street, right? I can't remember what song it was, but apparently Garrett Wang, the guy who plays Harry Kim in Star Trek Voyager, is somewhere in that video watching the concert.
really,
Yeah,
There's
I
a
was
lot-
looking. Yeah,
I just joined a Facebook group for Star Trek shit posting. Dude, there are some
Oh.
there are people in there. It's like people taking as much information as I did, watching all these series, but then they live it, or they come up with all these creative memes or things that like, holy shit, they spend a lot of time on it. It's really funny, or it's really witty, man. Interconnecting.
Dude, the
different
world
things.
is so unbelievably creative, but a lot of
Yeah.
people don't get to see it right now because it's housed in some niche community shit
Yeah.
posting. It's so crazy. Like I follow so many of these communities because I'm all over like social media and Twitch and playing video games and shit. And it's like it's a fucking standard inside of my community is that there's like somebody that and these memes are like good, dude. Like they like draw like comic books to make a
Right.
joke about something that a
Yeah.
streamer did last week. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it's fucking crazy the amount of work that goes into this shit. You would have to pay somebody a lot to create that kind of content about you, and people just like do it. It's just their jam.
that's the future. That's the future.
All right, so here's an interesting connecting question because we talked about before a couple weeks ago when you messaged me an article or video on UFOs, and
Oh
so
yeah.
Star Trek. Obviously, you've got to definitely have a base there, or just their lingo and you were using there. So Star Trek paints a picture of the Federation or these cultures of alien races that are all part of an intergalactic community or within a galactic community,
Mhm.
and the Prime Directive keeps Federation people within the Federation from contacting species until they develop warp drive. So they're able
Mhm.
to leave their solar system. Then they kind of come in, give them a heads up, tell them, kind of give them what's going on and what's in what you're going to run into out here and whatever. So, what do you think? I mean, to me, that seems plausible.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It
Yeah.
totally is fine. We don't know. I haven't had anybody land here saying they're from some kind of galactic federation and this is what's
Right.
going on, whatever. But that seems plausible in the 3D sense that there's some kind of reality out there. So with the video you sent me and UFOs in general, let's just dive into that. And what's your take on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree that that's plausible because uh number one, we haven't developed a warp drive. That's part of why I think that we actually have not developed it. Some people will say maybe the
Yeah.
military has already done this. Maybe they've already created this type of technology and they're testing it, and that's what the UFOs are, that it's our military. And I don't think that's the case at all,
Mhm.
for a number of different reasons. But it begs the question, who are flying the UFOs that we do see? But when we're talking about the intergalactic community, I bet that's probably what's waiting if we actually demonstrate some type of faster than light speed technology. If it's the graviinertial type of field that I've been talking about, that would certainly do the trick. I don't know if it'll leave behind some kind of warp trails for Vulcan science ship to see or whatever happened, right?
Uh-huh.
But
Yep.
like I bet like all these things that are flying around us, if we started actually having this technology, it would be impossible for them to not see. Like they can see that we've got nuclear weapons, all this other
Yeah.
stuff. So if we've got shipping that's going graviinertially around the world at super high speeds, and we're not using shipping boats anymore, we close all the mines down. They can see all this mining activity out on asteroids because you can just zip machines out there and zip humans out there for just 30 minutes or something like that, really fast. Um, that type of stuff. I think that we would eventually get a visit, and we would have some kind of like not optional discussion with a community of people who are just way further, like not just Vulcans to the Earthlings,
Mhm.
but like dimensionally further in terms of whatever Kardashev scale type of stuff, so that we can barely understand what we're looking at, kind of thing.
Well,
That's
and Star Trek does a good job with that too. I mean, a lot of shows do in different ways. Did you ever get into the Stargate series?
oh,
Stargate
definitely.
SG-1?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
totally.
All right. I've watched that was another during a time in my life. I was binge watching that, all the series, that Atlantis, all of them, all 10, the SG-1,
Right.
the Atlantis. But I was playing video games and just multitasking that whole dynamic. But it's very captivating the just the engagement and that imagination and in that so in those some I've been thinking about. So that I think there's a really good series on I think it's A&E that came out called Project Blue Book that's based on the original Project Blue Book, but it's dramatized like an actual show series. It's really well done. My grandma's into it. I was hanging out with her and watching. I'm like, well, this is really good. Like, so I was watching through the episodes and the way they were laying out the actual history. And I mean, pretty much the reality that they are there. It's everybody having their own opinions on kind of, like you said, who's in them, who's flying them. And I think it makes sense to me that there's likely so many races out there, so many species. They don't all abide by the Federation. It's only however many planets are in the Federation anyway. The Federation's the only one, and the other cultures have their own belief in not contacting species. But there's plenty of others you see in the shows that could care less about what everybody else says they should or shouldn't do. They're going to go contact that species if they want to. They're going to show up and do
Oh
whatever they
sure.
want to do. And so, like, even that one, the video you sent in Melbourne, the UFO ship that showed up on the back of the school lawn and these kids saw it and all had their own experience with it. My mom was telling me another one. I don't know if it's the same one. There's more detail about it from a different documentary that I guess came out recently on Amazon Prime that they just watched the other night. That's different than the one we were talking about, I think, before, the what is it? Something of the fifth kind. Encounters of the fifth
Close
kind.
encounters. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so it's
Right.
different than that one. It's another one, but she was giving me all these details, which I was really excited to hear because I picked up a lot from different documentaries that I found just all across the interwebs over time and different information I pieced together. And this one, like, she was really amazed. It put together things really well, the different sightings from different military reports in Russia and like shutting down nuclear silos. And the one she was talking about in Melbourne, where these kids saw this thing, they're remembering. and they drew out the images. They had big eyes, and it was a telepathic engagement, a feeling state. They sensed from them like messages and understanding, like they need to take care of the world better, to stop doing certain things. Nuclear weapons need to go. I mean, there's certain things they're communicating with these beings, and it's become more plausible to me that it's probably less likely that some federation, if there is one, is going to land and talk to whatever governments. Who are they going to talk to? The Americans, the Russians, the UN? I mean, where are they going to stop so that nobody,
totally. Yeah.
like who's they going to do it so that nobody's offended, nobody's pissed off, or nobody's going to start a war because they landed in the US and now Russia goes and preemptively bombs them because, or vice versa. I mean, just stupid petty shit. Right. So like, how are they going to do that? And I think it might be more individual connections. Like you have your own people up there. There's so many, like the shit posting. We're talking about groups, community groups. There's people that like, I think they're just going to come to certain people, and you find out people have had alien encounters. Maybe that becomes a common thing. And governments get all pissed off. Well, how come they're not coming to us? Like, well, fuck you. Nobody wants to come to you. You cause problems.
Thinking about the first person who actually creates a craft that can go outside of our atmosphere using faster than light technology, gravitational type technology. If they're out there and they're seeing that stuff happen, they can just come over and just be like, okay, hi, we're a mothership.
Totally.
We're just going to take
even coming to Earth, coming to us. Like, say there's people that regularly setting up. I mean, ESETI Ranch, there's different places, but even say to a more progressed dynamic that's not on TV, you don't hear about, that people actually are having encounters with aliens, conversations, and it's not that fantastical to me. I feel like it's the Hollywood and our culture has created that to be some very fantastical thing that seems very sensical to me. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, you call the news station because an alien came. Maybe you have these conversations with them over years, and they're kind of like psychedelic experiences. You don't really know what to make to it. You don't, and like they're 3D experiences, but as far as how you interpret them, you don't really know what to make of it. You have these conversations, they seem to go well. You ask each other questions, you're kind of whatever, they come, they go, but over years, and you don't, who are you going to talk to anyway? People may not believe you, but it doesn't matter. It's your, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've had one experience with that where I woke up and I looked at the foot of the bed and I saw a guy standing there. He had like long, kind of like gray hair. He looked like a dude from the 1600s or 1500s or something. Like, he was wearing a black leather jacket and blue jeans, and I could see through the light. The moon light was on him, right? So I was just like looking at these details. I'm like, there's actually a fucking person. And I was in Romania. That didn't help. This was really scary.
Yeah, I bet.
And like I could feel the dude was doing that telepathic type of communication. This was before I really got access to psychedelics on a serious level. And he was, I could feel him beaming to me. That's kind of, I felt like he was me. You know what I mean? Like we had some kind of like multi-life connection, and he was telling me like, keep going, keep learning all this different stuff about science and whatever. Just before I'd learned a lot. It's kind of a lot of fun looking back on that. But then the dude just disappeared, and I started screaming basically because I had never experienced something being there and not being there before. It was a lot more jarring than I would have expected. I was there with somebody, and she woke up and she's like, what's going on? And I started explaining it, just like, sorry, I'm just fucking panicking because of what just happened. So it just could have been a dream. It was like certainly a DMT state. It was not a dream. It was actually physically happening right there. But it left an imprint, but also like I was the next couple of weeks I was just looking around the wall, the corners in the hallways, just so I didn't just jump up on somebody who's just standing in my, because once those rules change for you and just somebody is there and they shouldn't be there, then that can happen anytime. That's fucking jarring. I didn't realize. That's one of the things that made me really happy about having a normal mode of perception and not seeing fucking dead people everywhere.
Well, and so that's, I guess, similar. It's nice we can keep pulling this graph in. So say your belief system is people don't just disappear out of thin air. They don't just go up. It's like pretty ingrained, and right. You may over time add cross references, Star Trek or possibilities. I can see that technology may exist. I may not know about it. It's fine, but they're pretty faint. Your reality is people do not show up if they're not, like, they don't just disappear. But then you see it, and it can just freak you out because it actually happens. I mean, it throws your mind into chaos or some kind of. And I think maybe in that hypnagogic state, or you're talking about seeing it in bed, seeing someone sitting over your bed, that maybe it just connects. We're more interconnected, so we're literally aware of more actual aspects or aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, like you can see stuff that's out of phase. Like they keep doing those in the Star Trek things where there's like out of phase people like working on your head and shit. You can see that shit when you're on DMT. Definitely, when you're peaking on acid and mushrooms, you can see fucking people around you doing stuff to you and whatever, doing stuff to other people, and it freaks people out. because it's like, wait, or is that real? And there's you tell me. I have no way to test it. There's no way to say is that
Well, and
somebody.
I wish like at some point here we're gonna get psychedelics down to a more of a science, right? I mean, they're already pretty good modern day. I mean, we're doing studies, doses. I mean, there's somebody I watched a video recently broke up psychedelic dosing into 7 categories that were great. They were great categories: microdosing, regular dosing, but there's in betweens. It totally makes sense because it matters.
Psychedelic,
There are nuanced layers with those doses that produce different, measurable, repeatable results.
sure.
And so when you can get into a place like, oh, you take this dose and this set and set, I think a lot more has to do with people's internal set and setting, diet, framework, whatever, and also external set and setting than people realize. It's not just the drug and the dose.
Oh yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
when you can combine those two in a repeatable setting, okay, when you do this drug, this set and setting, this intention, whatever, you will see beings phase shifted by point X3 factor in this reality, and you will see that. You will expect that. That is what you see. That is the information you can bring back. It makes sense.
Well, I've got this encyclopedia of psychoactive plants, and I went through it just page by page, and basically every other plant makes you see spirits, makes you see freaking gremlins and elves and stuff, makes you see humanoids and all this type of thing. But they also say makes you see spirits. So it's when you can just look at it from a purely brain perspective, brain chemistry perspective, and like, okay, when your brain is in this mode, it's going to project humanoid structures, just like a smiley face. Like, how does that represent a human face? But we can interpret that, but it's kind of in reverse, where it takes like a human thing and projects it in your mind's eye. It's projection in your mind's eye, standing out there. Now there's a humanoid standing right next to you. I have an elf standing next to me, and I can literally see him. There's a wolf right over here, and when I look, it's not there. That kind of stuff. Like it's using you can have auditory hallucinations of birds and things. It's using stuff that's deeply ingrained inside of our biology, a deep instinct, and how we recognize animals, other humans, and just like projecting that onto this reality. That's a nuts and bolts way of looking at it. But when you're still left with that impression, is it real or not? Same question as we're talking about.
Well, I think that's repeated experiences and then just reflection, right? I mean, really repeated experiences creates more lines, like in your actual 3D.
Those lines are beliefs; those aren't statements. That doesn't make it real.
Right, but if you have, with the more experience you have here, it adds new lines here, like in the 3D. So it starts to ingrain. So you have a psychedelic experience over here, and now this faint line shows up here. But that wasn't there before in your conscious everyday life. But now that you've had these experiences, there's certain thought processes that remain, or realities or experiences you've had. The more you have, not necessarily on that, or just in life, these will ingrain more heavily. It becomes more real to your perception because of your experiences over time and your reflection on them. I think it makes sense to me at this point in my life and experiences and reflection on it that I don't know what the percentage is, but it seems like a significant combination of both, projecting your reality to an external anthropomorph or symbolic representation. But also, I think there seems to be, like you're saying, the different plants. Use this plant to see this. Use plant. I think it's also very plausible that certain elements within just our ecosystem, without having to create something from science, like literally in nature, that would phase shift us, if you will, enough in our perception to see things that really are parallel living realities right along coexisting with us. It makes perfect sense to me.
That's their interpretation. That's like the ancients' interpretation. Is like we are taking this to see the spirit world, which is here with us, but it's also in a place where we can't physically go, and where you might be able to send your soul for a moment, but not your body. That's what
then the crossover being like the Gnostics. There's a set of Gnostics that use astral projection and different psychedelic experiences. You get to see your actual projections and how they create realities within the spirit world, or thought forms, or different things. So they're mixing the two, but they're intentionally going in for that dynamic to see how their reality is creating things in other realms or dimensions.
Yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
we get a cart before the horse situation on this a lot. Like someone will have an experience and they try to define whether or not that was real without really like defining what the fuck real means first.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because like when we're talking about it again, we're relating it to how does this make you feel? If it appeared in your mind's eye, then it's real in terms of your mind's eye. If it's not real outside of here, it's still real in your mind's eye. It still has an effect on you, an impact, a potential impact. If you go and you try and learn that lesson, then it's there for you. And so it's exactly. It's just my imagination. Your imagination is powerful as fuck. Imagination determines your entire reality.
Yeah, they'll say
So
like it's just my imagination, like it dismisses it, but then you'll say, okay,
Yeah.
what isn't your
exactly.
imagination? And they have
Yeah.
difficulty telling you something that is not their imagination.
Well, think about that. That goes right along with the discussion about feelings. It's like our imagination and our feelings are suppressed because those are childlike qualities, and we're trying to
Yeah.
be like adults and be good, like bricks in the wall, and press the button
Not
with
me,
the.
man. Speak for yourself. I'm trying to be as young as possible.
Oh man, I need to fit in. I don't want to stick out. Yeah.
I'm a 37-year-old dude that's trying to figure out how to go play in the sandbox with his Tonka trucks again because like the other stuff was just no thanks.
Totally.
I took a wrong turn getting out of the sandbox, leaving my Tonka trucks. Not gonna lie,
Dude, let the robots do the work, bro.
totally. Yeah, that's I've spent a lot of time in programming because of, if we're gonna get to the point where robots are doing our work, I'm gonna be able to make sure that I can program my own, so it can do
Yeah,
all
we
of
need
my
the
work.
robots to fix the robots. I'm down.
Yeah, yeah.
So it
That's
sounds
just
like
you just got to make a robot that makes robots that fixes robots,
Oh,
Adam. It's very
totally.
simple.
Duh.
Yeah,
Oh, it is.
and then just make one robot that can control all the other robots.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
It's the governor
Yeah, okay.
robot. And then
Oh,
it
that's
takes
a
over your
Nagbot.
entire reality and you treat it as an oppressive force. Oh man.
All part of the plan.
I'm personally for the like computerization of society. I think humans waste altogether too much time doing shit that really just like it's just not engaging the part of a human that's really like valuable. Like I especially use this metaphor when I go to McDonald's because like I see these people like they're doing a job. I appreciate the job that they're doing. I want the food, they give it to me. But also like a computer program could do that job better. And like I don't want these people to be out of a job, but I would actually prefer that they were in a job that really actually utilized the human, like it really actually needed a human. It
Totally.
couldn't be done by a computer.
Well, I mean, the argument is that that when we shift more stuff, then there are fewer jobs because if all of a sudden you've got a factory of 1,000 people and you've got a machine that can do that work for 1,000 people, but times 10, then basically like when we're looking at this like everybody needs a job, then these people lost fucking livelihoods and you're now in the street type of shit. That's a huge consequence to making your process more efficient. You should be like not making 1,000 people have to go to work there or whatever. That's a good thing. And so when we make society in this way where that's a bad thing because they're going to go out on the street, that's a problem. That's what UBI was proposed long time ago to address. And honestly, it was used in successful civilizations back throughout history. It doesn't matter. Like you could see cuneiform tablets where they're talking about giving free food to people because that stabilized society and it allows people to live like whatever life they're going to live, and they can still get a job and make more money. But you have that safety net on poverty to where like those people don't have to be there at McDonald's, and if you make that McDonald's automated, you're not like depriving people of like sending people into poverty.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what the social modern day equivalent would be, or if there is one, but the principle is interesting. So in the Hebrew culture, part of their instruction was when they were harvesting their grain, they would always leave, I think it's the corners of the field for the poor to come and harvest. They weren't they was just part of their laws and traditions. They didn't actually harvest all of their food. They literally left it, but the poor still had to come find these fields and harvest it themselves. Like they didn't harvest it, go to the local market and hand it out. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it was just the concept of it. They were leaving it there to be gleaned. They weren't just taking it all up and then making you pay for it, and now you can't pay for it.
Yeah, you make that more efficient when you're basically giving people free money in a $1,200 stimulus check. That's as soon as you do that, there's this huge economic boom. And like we've got an economic issue right now because the stimulus check hasn't happened, like right now. But when you actually just give people money, like the basic amount and you actually need to give people free housing and stuff too, because you're like, well, all that money is going to go to rent and somebody owns the building they live in. So you're just paying somebody else with this public money. And this is a problem. So you've got to address it from multiple angles. But if you have a tier of people, if you didn't have a job and you could go get a free house somewhere and it's dignified, you got like some free money to go and like buy food and shit. Because that's easier than like making you go to somebody's field. We certainly do that today. You can't just go to the corner of somebody's field and get what you need. It's way better if all that stuff is harvested by professionals who are being paid and that you are going to like the store where that is, and you've got this free money, this abstracted form of currency that lets you get that stuff.
Yeah.
It
Well,
it
clearly
saves a lot of
culture's a little
money.
different today. What do you on that subject? What do you think about the idea? And I guess Zach too. I mean, your thoughts on breaking this down, because it's. I mean, there's the overall concept, which is easy to have a yes or no on, but then it's actually breaking down the minutia of what that would look like and be feasible for a universal basic income.
I mean, I think it would save us a lot of money because there wouldn't be no poverty anymore. So a lot of crime would disappear. A lot of people who are pushed into things like prostitution, that would disappear. It would boost the economy because all of a sudden you got people spending money, and I think it would actually save on all this different like public spending that we do on cops and save people's lives, all this type of. But if there's no poverty anymore, because you've got this type of supply for people, then the main issue people usually think of is like there's no motivation for people to work. But that if you could live on say $12,000 a year, is that cool by you, or do you want to get a job and make like more than that? So just is an incentive to go get a job to make more money, even if you're still getting the basic income, just like everybody is. And it would just be like a hugely stabilizing force in civilization. It hasn't been tried in current iterations of our governments because we're coming out of a colonial system. The system of European power was designed to just like project power and to take land and to expand territory, which requires you to oppress and create underclasses of the indigenous people and the slaves that you bring in and all that stuff. So you have to create this like intense class system. You can't just give people free money because it's the opposite of that. It creates like all the people who are below the poverty line. Like right now, if you don't have a job, you're going to starve in the street. That's the carrot and the stick. Is that hey, work or starve, right? Find a way to hustle or starve. Be born to somebody and get a trust fund or starve. So it's kind of a weird situation that you can fall below that. There's a lot of problems that happen, and a lot of I just think it'd be so much simpler, even if it costs like 125 billion a year type of thing. We're going to save in all these other areas, and just to have poverty and have like I think there's like 40 million kids hungry or 20 million kids hungry in America right now or something, not getting enough food every day. It just to solve that issue forever, we don't even know what kind of dividends we'll have and how much invest these communities will be in making a dignified life like common. You know what I mean?
I find it
Yeah.
really interesting that it's not like we don't have that money that we spend somewhere. We actually think that there's some other problem that is higher priority than ensuring that like the people, especially like the children or the elderly or the disabled of our own country are taken care of. Apparently, like investing in military industrial complex is of a higher priority than that. And like, don't get me wrong, I understand the Game of Thrones. If we don't have a military, somebody with a military is going to come take our shit. I get it. But is it really like so much higher of a priority to handle like development and the other things that we do with that money, of which a lot of it is not even as worthwhile as military industrial complex shit? Just and we prioritize that over like the women and children of the United States. Like that seems fucked to me.
Well, not to mention,
not
I mean, how many? I'm sure it's billions. I don't know what the number is. I used to be way more into the minutia of politics. Geez, pushing 8 years ago, I was into really into all that. But
it doesn't even have to be. Like if we actually set up efficient logistics supply chains for this food and stuff, and for the process of ensuring that people had food and it maybe wouldn't be anywhere near as of a strain on the system as it is of a strain on a system that was in no way, shape, or form built to facilitate that. This colonial system that's not made for that.
Well, and then also the dynamic of, in that same vein of that we give away billions or whatever in aid to other countries, which probably often goes to dictators, foreign dictators, and can just be a political thing, like lobbyists. We're just paying them to do their own democratic whatever thing they're doing over there.
How do we justify giving like $7 billion
away
to
when we have
another
kids that are
country when
hungry?
like if we got kids fucking dying in the street and shit? Like what the
Right.
fuck?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're
Hold
right.
up.
Usually somebody's taken along the way. Usually there's like a political, because our political system that is in charge of distributing the money is completely out of control. It's we all know how it's been corrupted. You're talking about lobbying, but it's basically legal corruption. Some of it's illegal. And I mean, you're talking about the military industrial complex. I think it seems notable that who was it? Eisenhower talked about it talking about taking money from schools to make bombs and all that, just like you're talking about. And then the next president to talk about is who was just talking about this military industrial complex, and there's all these people who want him to go to war and want him to make more war. And that's one of the kind things that I'll say to him in comparison to like Hillary Clinton. Like Obama took us from 2 wars to 7. Hillary Clinton would have loved to expand us to other wars. She loved to fucking do that. She laughed about that shit.
Mm-hmm.
So Donald Trump is there. He's just like, I don't know if I should start more wars. I don't think it's a good idea, because he's just like a little bit, reckless and on his own on this topic. And he's about the military industrial complex, and it's like, it's amazing that they don't kill him. I guess it's way past that point, but we're basically just watching a government that is designed to loot the populace. It's taking money out of people's bank accounts. It's making people sell their houses, and the house goes to the bank. We're watching this happen right now. We're seeing this major upward transfer of wealth that's happening with these like CARES Act and HEROES Act type of things. They're permanently impoverishing everybody, and they're taking all that wealth and they're putting it into bank accounts as numbers. This is an untenable situation. It can't last this way forever, because the more people that are living below this dignified poverty line, they don't have fucking dental care and health care and stuff, and people are finding out, thanks to the internet, that it doesn't matter which political stripes they come from. They're finding out that these are more efficient programs like universal health care, that you do save money. Everybody's covered no matter what, and how dignified and meaningful that is. We find this out. More people are finding this out, and they're just radicalizing in that direction. You know what I mean? And it's been traditionally identified as left, because that's what we see as politics in this country. It's like, oh, Bernie Sanders talks about these policies, but not, George W. Bush or something, and we look at other countries and they've got them. European countries have these so people are in general moving in this direction because it's the only way to go. This is where more access to information leads you. And but the problem is that we don't see anybody. There's no champions of these popular policies. We got like 80% of people want universal health care. That's something like 46% of Republicans too. So it's like really popular, considering, and but if 80% of the people want something and it doesn't happen, and it's happens for so long, why would we call this a democratic system?
Yeah, how the fuck is that even possible? We have a system of representatives, and they don't represent the whole. Actually, they're like they have
lobbying. Yeah, because they're
exactly.
donors.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know the reasons behind it, but just like from the outside, like, this should be fucking that's like the total common man. Like, wait, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah, everybody I talk to wants universal health care. Why don't we fucking have this? Totally. And they're like, well, actually, we can't afford it. And it's like, no, fuck you. We want it. Like, take money away from something else and give us this. I don't give a fuck what you're spending your money on right now.
Exactly. Cable news will tell you, oh, it's going to cost $30 trillion over 7 years. Or 10 years, and it's like, well, did they also tell you that our current healthcare system is going to cost us $55 trillion over that 10 years?
Yeah, it's like, right out of your pocket. Best statistic everyone should know is that one half of them are bullshit and the other half is lies, because it's always some type of manipulated data that provides you with a number that leads you to believe what the person wanted you to believe. So I can say, whoa, we can't do that. That's going to cost $30 trillion. And people are like, oh my God, $30 trillion. That's crazy. But if I say, like, we can do this, it would have cost us $55 trillion. It would be a savings of $25 trillion. All of a sudden, the exact same statistic paints a completely different story.
For sure. And it makes a huge difference in terms of the minds of the people. And you can only hold this reality at bay for so long. And so we're watching the system is basically crumbling. You're not going to vote for Biden for universal health care, or for like ending fucking climate change and shit, and restoring ecosystems. None of these people are actually going to do that.
I wouldn't vote for Biden for washing my dishes.
No, I wouldn't either. Like, it's not going to happen. No,
come on, man. You could wash the dishes.
It's right.
Not if I got kids in my house, I can't.
No.
Yeah. No sniffing allowed.
No sniff rules here. Yeah.
It's just too weird. How can that be the figurehead of our country? It's just too weird.
Because they rigged it for him. Like
but it's just too weird.
Obama called him.
Yeah,
it is. It's like they're trying to lose. He was one of the least. him and Kamala, like Kamala was like the one who had to drop out because she was so unpopular before Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, so they've yeah.
Did she say she actually? I found out my mom mentioned that she said somebody asked if the vaccine came out for COVID, would you take it? She said yes, absolutely, unless Trump recommended it or said that
Yeah,
it should.
no,
I mean,
yeah,
she was in jest or was she serious?
no, she was serious, and then she was asked about that further on the in this last
What kind of answer is
debate.
that?
She's like she's a mess. This is her problem. She has no real public presence. She answers stuff in this really like proud kind of way, and she thinks she's going to deliver a slam when she totally doesn't. It's the same thing as she's always talking about her resume and stuff like that. It's like people don't give a fuck, dude.
She's like this person that just drops the mic after every sentence that she says, but every time you're like, wait, why'd you
Oh
drop the
yeah,
mic? I don't even know what you said yet. Like,
well,
I don't get it.
like they criticized her at this debate. They're like, "Are you sure this is what you want to say? Because it seems like you might be diminishing the faith in the vaccine in general." Some people, and
Are you sure this is
she
what
didn't.
you want
Yeah,
to
she's
say?
like, "No, that's not that at all." And it's just this, and you know, I trust the scientists. I trust Dr. Fauci, but I don't trust Donald Trump. But I was listening on
But what if his
NPR.
opinion is based off of those scientists and shit?
Ex-
Like,
well,
what's no
there's
critical thinking
and
at all.
it is not critical thinking, right? There's NPR, they were castigating her as well for that and response, because they're like, look, you're not making it better, you're still reducing the faith in the vaccine. But like, I was looking at the Oxford vaccine that they just closed down because they were having like neurological difficulties with one of the test participants. But I heard about it because I heard RFK Jr. talking about how they changed it from like measuring against a placebo to measuring against the meningitis vaccine to make it seem better, because meningitis vaccine's got a lot of reactivity to it,
Yes.
and that's known. So like that's why we don't everybody doesn't get it, right?
Mhm.
So they decided to compare it to that just to kind of like fudge the results. And so it turns out that a whistleblower
Safer
sent
than our other
documents.
vaccines. Like, that
A
means
lot of them,
something good.
you're right, some of them are, you're right. Yeah, they're all, you got to take them case by case, and this is the problem. This is what isn't happening, is this kind of blanket statement. Like, I don't like anti-vaxxers in general aren't thinking like every single vaccine ever created is terrible and doesn't work. There's like some that work, and it depends on the efficacy of the vaccine and like the
Sure.
comparing it to the side effects and stuff. Is it worth it? You've got to actually balance these things, and we're a fucking market where they just want to put another 10 on the schedule for everybody until you get your flu shot too.
Sure.
You know, so it's a huge market.
Ridiculous.
See that happening, and so people are. It's like the anti-vaxxers are worse than the anti-vaxxers.
Sure.
You know, because they're just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, you're gonna transmit a disease to my family, and it's gonna kill people, so I'm gonna kill you first. Why don't you?
But
Can't stay
also,
on an
you're
island.
vaccinated. You're vaccinated. How are you
Right,
going to
exactly.
get the disease?
Yeah.
And I
If
mean,
your
it's
vaccine works that you're so standing up for, why are you worried about someone else getting you sick?
Absurd. Completely
right.
illogical.
Makes no
It's
sense.
just a faith. It's a faith in the expert class, and the expert class
Yeah.
is lying in this case. And like the flu shot, it's not actually going to raise your resistance against the flu, but it's going to make you like a flu virus factory and get other people sick for like a certain period of days or whatever. So why would you really want to do that? They're marketing. Like, if I saw somebody comparing data that showed as soon as they started increasing the flu vaccines, the death rate for seniors started increasing as well. You know, I don't know if it's true, but people got to take these on a case by case basis and not pretend like everything's all good or everything's all bad, because they're just playing this stupid puppet show. And the puppet show is the thing that's driving us into the hole. Like, if we know that our elections are rigged. We see what they did against Bernie Sanders, the primary. Obama calling the candidates and telling them to quit, that's rigging the election. Even just the media collusion that these different political entities have with these different channels and stuff, that's election rigging. Like, they've got better elections in Venezuela and Bolivia, and then we go fucking overturn them anyway because we say their election was wrong because we rigged that election count. So like, I feel like we should be in the streets. If we did go in the streets to protest for election reform and we knew specifically what we wanted in terms of making a real election, that would be the number one step to like addressing every single fucking problem that we have.
I feel like the most effective way to vote in the very near future is literally going to have people are going to have to post a video to their social media profile, putting hashtag their candidate's name, so that like everybody else in the world, if they want to, can go and look and be like, okay, yeah, look, like these motherfuckers actually do want Donald Trump to win. These motherfuckers actually do want this. And you can actually get some sense of your own on who people are voting for. So it's not like all out front.
This is, I think you're right on it. This is where I came up with. It's along those lines. It's sort of like you on your Facebook profile or something. You can save all this information about you. Why can't you save the candidates that you want to pick or whatever? Why can't you save your preference on certain type of topics, even if it's not on the ballot? If it's an issue, somebody can write it, and then you can see it and save your preference on it as well. And if this happened, then if it were public, like you're saying it, then
well, Adam,
people can
good
just
news. That will be a part of Facebook Premium, which we're
Facebook
launching in July.
10.0. Paid
It's going to be
$9.95 a vote.
$11.99 a month. You will be free of advertisements, except for, of course, the ones that will stuff you with across other platforms that we get corroborative data for. But you know, you will be able to put these on your profile. Then, fucking Jesus.
Yeah, we'll have our voting class of like 2 million people. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's
It's fucking paid to participate voting class.
Yeah, you see where like these can be like better polling systems that can turn into eventually voting systems if they are proven to have enough integrity. For right now, we've got the paper ballot system, which is imperfect as it is, and we've got like the media hysteria that drive people into certain kind of like voting behaviors. So there's like a lot of work to do in a hydra to take care of, because you have to get rid of these media companies that are
like, here's what we do. We standardize high-speed internet, put it inside of every household. We give every single like citizen of the United States, their family has a household. It has an internet connection. They're provided with food, universal basic income. Then inside of that household, they only have their router, and their router has a MAC address, and that MAC address gets to cast one vote. And the household has to convene together and come to a decision on which one we're going to vote on. And this encourages talking about like current events and societal issues inside of the household. And every household gets one vote. All these votes can be completely tracked by MAC address. Oh my God, somebody could spoof in with this. Spare me. I've been in internet security for a long time. You can tell a fake fucking from a real if you have any idea what you're doing.
Sure.
So,
well, you like if you're talking about the infrastructure for handling the security of these votes, you can do it a few different ways. But like if there were decentralized local servers that were tasked with people who were had a lot of rules on them, like election specific rules, then you and your vote can be sent encrypted up to that, and then it can create an ID for you, and then a ballot ID that it passes up. So
yeah, I like how we act like we can encrypt data effectively. There's a reason why encryption never went past 256-bit encryption, and it's because no one fucking cracked it. Like, we don't know how. We don't have the ability to do that in any type of like reasonable manner where you're positive about the result or anything like that. So like encrypting this vote, it's actually very simple.
Right.
Like, it's totally something that could be done with what we have right now.
And like with the blockchain technology, you can just like be passing hashes around and stuff for doing recounts. So you can actually make it so you're not even having to pass the full ballot back and forth around. There's ways to design this. And so that if you have to, because one of the reasons why you want to use paper ballots is because it's so difficult to hack that ballot, or hack like the whole box of ballots. To hack like 100,000 ballots is a lot of work. Right. Sure. You got to go through each. So, but if you're hacking some database somewhere, that's not a lot of work. But if you have a very decentralized, distributed, local people doing this, there's going to be so many different servers for you to hack if you want to change the vote, that that's not a feasible way to do that.
Yeah, so when a vote gets cast, it needs to be that vote needs to be housed on like 57,000 servers at the same time.
Yeah,
so
even if
there's no fucking way that somebody would get it everywhere.
Right, and even if it's like in two and it can pass a recount back and forth, I think there's a lot of like engineering to do where people could figure out the details here. But
sure, you could do it more.
It's possible.
57,000 servers, I suspect.
Sure. Yeah, no, like but I get your point for sure. So if you have a system which you can use initially for polling, you get very accurate poll data, because like there's a TV program or something, and then a million people go and change their preferences for this particular issue, and they're like, now I support gay marriage, and so now it's legal because 51% of people said it. Yeah, and if some changes and now it's 49 and it's not legal anymore, there's still like issues to determine about how direct this democracy can be.
Well, there would need to be a higher critical mass, right? So that it doesn't fucking like flippity floppity all around.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't know if that's
because let's face it, 4chan would troll this system. Like, we have to take that into account. The internet is filled with retards that don't have very much to do, and they have an extremely high And so they're most definitely going to come together in groups that generate world-changing results just because they can just plug votes on the internet.
Oh, sure. That's brigading, right? And so that's something that when more people are logged into the system and part of the system, that reduces the ability for people to brigade in that kind of way. Just because it's a bigger pool for them to have to do, they can't create as big of a splash. So you got issues in like the digital divide, people who don't have access to devices. And
well,
like
they oftentimes think that
internet
is their safety net, and they come to find out, well, there's like an awful lot of people on the internet, and so they actually can make a really big splash. You know,
yeah.
in
Now,
a lot of cases.
now the bridge is called Bodie McBoatface or something
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah. I mean, there's I think like we're talking about also like the unity of humans and machines, like the singularity. It seems like this type of voting mechanism brings us closer to that flock behavior, like when you're looking at birds and you see this one goes this way and then some vote and then not enough, and so they have to come back, or enough happen goes that way. So that flock can be enabled by using this type of thing, so people can be running together and just all turn to decide this type of thing if they've got the proper like cyborg implants or something, whatever allows them to connect their mind's eye in and out to other people directly like that. That this is a system that would allow it to happen. So it's from that futuristic perspective, like the cyborg perspective, back here to like, well, let's have better elections, ones that more people are a part of, ones that are easier to get to, reduce the barrier of entry, make it so easy that it's just something on your phone and you click
Make it desirable too. I mean, like, I'm a person that cares about issues and cares about what happens in the world, and I couldn't give two shits less about voting because I don't think it's actually even effective.
Then this imagine if this is effective, and imagine if you knew that you saving your preference here actually has like
that would be fucking great. I would like that more than where I'm currently from.
Really. I do too. That's why I spend so much time sitting here thinking about it, because there's if we when like Egypt is a good example where they had a revolution and they had all the people out there in the square, but nobody knew what to do next. And so the Muslim Brotherhood came in, and so just like right wing fascists in power came over and took over, and then you had the people who were the liberal class from before begging the military to take over, which is kind of similar when you've got liberals in the United States begging the military and FBI to take over Donald Trump over Russiagate and some other bullshit like that.
Yeah,
it's not that different.
I'm all for protesting and actually literally being in the streets and whatever that looks like. Like for what you said, if there's some kind of organized dynamic, you are actually producing some kind of measurable change with some kind of purpose. You know what the next steps are. Like because we did a show in the Chaz district up here, and they had their demands listed up on the fence and like what things they wanted to see, and different things were checked off. And like I don't remember off the top of my head, but some of them were a little too vague and nonsensical. Or like, I mean, was that overnight? Because that's not going to happen. I mean, what are you actually looking for? What's practical here and doable to actually create a dialogue to create change? Not just
that's like this what happens when you have a small community of people making that list. And so if you have this entire internet community of people saving the stuff they care about, I can look at your profile and see stuff you care about, and I can save how I care about those issues. That's the kind of creating this network web of all these people in the way that they feel about reality, to the point where that participation makes a better list. Like when you do all that stuff, it's like you take a poll to number one issue economy, number two coronavirus or something, and they are doing it that way, but they're using small data sets to do that, right? So if you were, instead of just doing a sample size, you were just doing this whole thing of people and everybody who wanted to vote, you got like 200 million votes on who they want president to be or something like that.
We could even, I mean, we could have a machine that does this realistically. And I understand this bridges into some place that people are like, oh my God, my privacy. But like, yeah, everything you're doing on the internet, somebody can find out about it anyways right now. But like, if we actually had an AI that was parsing all of the communication and was basically discerning from those communications, where do people stand on what? And it could basically generate this without us even having a voting process. We could just live our normal life and it would fucking know.
Honestly, like I agree, and as long as that AI were able to have integrity, then you could have an AI government, and it would be.
I don't even think it needs to have integrity. I think it needs to functionally be like a fucking glorified calculator, right? Like it listens to what everybody says, and then it gives you a data readout.
Just what I mean by that is that it can't be hacked by somebody, so it forces their conclusions in certain directions. Like give $1 million to Kane, right?
Sure. Well,
You
I
know,
mean, if it is sourcing just like people's commentary, then like you're
yeah,
going to have the ability for that because you could just create enough chatter on the line that it would then believe that. But then we go back to the like not big enough, not a big enough body to make a splash in the pool because the pool's too large. And this makes a huge pool. This is the pool of like every daily communication over basically a 4-year period gets to a decision of like, this is where the people actually stand on this. And so this
yeah,
is by the numbers where we ought to move in the next, you know,
right.
whatever
What
iteration.
if like Google's already made this, but they decide not to go with it because they're like, that's going to change. We're going to not have a business anymore because the AI said that we should get rid of Google and sell the money and give it to the poor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Google
Unplug
turns
that
into
one.
Jesus over and over again.
Yeah,
I've
it's very
actually got to go.
possible.
I've got to go right now. It's 10 o'clock and I've got to pass out. I
All
gotta
right,
be
All
up
right.
cool.
early in the morning.
Well, this has been a very good conversation. I think we could talk for like 100 hours. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
That
thanks,
was a
Aaron.
Aaron,
blast.
thank
It's
you
always
for
a
being here
blast.
as always. Try, everybody watching, try and expand your mind to maybe step outside of the default mode network for a moment because it might completely change your perception of reality, and life might be a lot better than you actually think it is once you see it from a different perspective. You guys have a wonderful night.
Woo.